to. I've been to about 100 countries and all 7 continents, and I'm not trying to impress you. I just like to go all over the world because the world is my oyster and I'm Johnny Quest Jr. And many, many years ago, we had an amazing president who had a very interesting grip on the English language. His name was George W. Bush. And I listened to his speeches obsessively because he would put a verb in the weirdest place, or he would run out of intellectual steam at the end of a sentence, like when he addressed the employees of NASA. Many years ago, I was on my Bon Jovi mobile parked outside of a venue, I think in Florida, and there he is addressing members of NASA. And he said, "You spatial," and I know he's meaning S-P-A-C-I-A-L, and there's no such word. There's S-P-A-T-I-A-L, which basically is having to do with space. But he says, "You spatial," and there's this awful sucking maw of like 2 seconds of dead television. And you see all the corporate people going, "We could have sold 900 million gallons of Gatorade in that time. What are you doing, Mr. President? Say something!" But he realizes he got to spatial and he doesn't know what to say next. And it's like when you had that old Macintosh and you try and open up something like Word, you're like, "Hold on a minute. I'm getting there, hold on. All right, did you mean this one?" And so he's running through his mind going, "I must find a word." And so he said, "Spatial, entrepreneur." I said, "What the hell do you mean?" You pulled that out of your keister for sure. Basically, those who buy and sell space. And so I went on stage that night, I said, "Spatial entrepreneur." And I talked about it thinking I'm the only one in the world who caught it. How wrong I was. I went to the internets later on my Bon Jovi mobile and I typed in spatial entrepreneurs to find spatialentrepreneurs.com with a beautiful graphic of the moon with a $ on it. And so at least that was happening. But he inspired me to travel because he would demonize country like, "Don't go to Pakistan. You know, they're the Pakistanians, they're evildoers, they're terrorizers, terrifiers. Stay home, stay under a rock, don't read, don't do anything. Take a passport, shred it, burn it. Don't go anywhere, don't leave anything, stay in your county. Be scared all the time, terror alert, terror alert, terror alert." And so I'm like, really? Screw that. And so every country he said don't go to, I went to, including North Korea, Pakistan, Iraq, Afghanistan. I went to all of them, and besides one crazy mortar attack in Baghdad, I had a really good time in all of these places. And so I do not choose to make myself an enemy of the world or any of the world's people, because I don't think there's any real solutions in like demonizing a country. Whereas everyone in Africa is stupid. And I usually travel alone. I've been across the African continent, just me and my backpack, well over 20 some times. And I'm not trying to impress you. I'm not brave, nor am I a tough guy, but I am insanely curious. And I'm really not all that much concerned about my well-being, in that if I die on some interesting trip, I'd rather die tomorrow and it be interesting than rather die at 118 years of age, melting into my couch after watching 80,000 broadcasts of MacGyver. And so that's just the path I've chosen. And so last year, I knew I had November, for the most part, free. So I called my retired, but comes out of retirement for me, travel agent named Rita. Rita has retired, except when I call. And I have a running joke with Rita. I go, "Rita, are you still retired?" She goes, "Not when you call, honey, because when you travel, it's always interesting. Where do you want to go this time?" I said, "Antarctica." And she went, "You've got to go in November." And I said, "Why are we so excited?" She said, "The penguins are breeding." And I said, "Well, it's more action than I'm getting, so I'll go." And so she said, "I have the perfect trip for you. It's made for you. It's the most boring trip in the history of Antarctic travel. It's made, it's the trip for you." I go, "Why is it the trip for me?" "It's nothing but lectures day after day. Global climate change, biodiversity, codependent ecosystems. It's 5 hours of lectures. You have to take notes. I think you have to take an exam to get off of the ship. Henry, it's so sciencey. Everyone will hate it except for you." I said, "I'm in." And so I leave Los Angeles to Texas to Buenos Aires to Ushuaia in Argentina, and I get onto this ship full of fellow eco-travelers and hardcore scientists to spend 2 weeks getting to the Antarctic Peninsula and back. And so my fellow travelers are very different than I am. They're traveling with someone else, and I have to be the weird person sitting alone at their tables for meals. I'm like, "Excuse me, is a seat taken?" Like, "No." "Are you traveling alone?" "Yes."
is everything okay?
Yeah, because I like getting up and going when I want to, not looking for my other half to, find the motivation to go places.
Henry, you're traveling alone. Is there anything we need to know about?
Yes, I'm one of the most incredibly serious and intense people you'll ever meet in your life, and so deal with that. And so, we got along just fine. But I figured very, very quickly that I am there for different purposes. I'm there to learn about global climate change, etc., from a bunch of experts where it is really noticeably happening. My fellow travelers obviously concerned with all that stuff, but they're penguin fans, and all they talked about was penguins. Like,
Henry, are you excited about the penguins?
I'm like, not wanting to rain on a parade. I'm like, well, I'm looking forward to perhaps encountering these aquatic birds.
Henry, say it. Penguin, penguin.
No, I am not going to chant penguin at 07:45 hours with a plate of steaming eggs in front of me.
Henry, have you seen March of the Penguins?
I haven't.
You want to watch it on my iWatch?
Not today. And every scientist on the ship, Bob the geologist, Annette the German whale expert, no matter who this person's, what this person's discipline is, these people grab these scientists.
We're going to see
penguins. I'm like, yes,
yes, sir, you're going to see so many penguins, your fat head is going to spin off your skinny little neck.
But there's a look of exhaustion on the faces of all the scientists. When you say penguin, they go like,
yes, you're going to see penguins.
and you can tell they have no animosity towards penguins, but there's something about what penguins do that wears them out. I'm like,
I want to know what this is.
so by day 5, we finally make landfall. Otherwise, it's just been all kinds of lectures because there's no land to fall on. And so finally, we get the call in our little cabins. Report to the lounge in 1 hour for your How to Meet a Penguin lecture. People go running to the lounge an hour early, waiting to learn how to meet a penguin. And so we're going to go to an island on that day to meet Gen 2 and chinstrap penguins. And we find out they have no predators on land, so they're not necessarily afraid of you. So they will come up. Do not talk to the penguins. Do not pat the penguins. Do not hug the penguins. Do not steal the penguins. That is their island, not yours. It is springtime. They will be building nests and procreating. Their fecal matter is red, and so you'll see red trails known as penguin highways. Step over them. When a penguin is crossing your line of walking, you stop. The penguin has the right of way. Basically, don't traumatize these beautiful animals in this endangered environment. We got it. And so an hour later, we're in our cold weather gear, going onto rubber boats to go through this fog cloud to this island to meet some penguins. I'm in the back of a little rubber boat with Annette, our German whale expert, who's steering the boat. We go into this cloud of fog, and I inhale a stench that is more intense than the first 4 Black Sabbath albums being played at once. Oh! And I look at Annette, I said, let me take a big fat guess. That is the smell of penguins. And there's that look like,
yeah, it is the penguins. Oh boy, are you going to get the penguins?
a minute later, the smell is so intense, is hugging your lungs closed. Your lungs are like, sorry, I can't let more of that in this body. I'm going on strike. And so within 5 minutes, you're losing your equilibrium and will to live because the stench is monumental. You get through the clouds, see the edge of the island in front of you. And there's not one penguin. There's not 5 penguins. There's hundreds of penguins, and they're standing in lines on high points as the ice and snow is in waves. And it's the most beautiful thing I have ever seen in my life, besides the first time I landed in Africa, and the plane I landed when I landed in Kenya, a bunch of zebra had to part ways as they ran by the plane. When my mind is blown, and the next time my mind got that blown was seeing a bunch of penguins, and the penguins see the boats coming, and they start moving towards the shore, because you're curious about them, they seem to be curious about us too, and you see them zipping up their penguin outfits, taking one last hit, and they come right up to you. And they stink because they are covered in their own crap, and they're black and white and red and green and brown, and they're just disgusting. And so a male penguin dipped in crap looking for a date, Amsterdam, and so they come right up to you like, and they peck your boots. They're like, you're not food. They give you a pissed off look and keep going. My fellow travelers are euphoric. Like, Henry, look at the penguins. And the penguins, they're gorgeous and covered in crap. And so I stood with these people day after day as we all freaked out on penguins. And they were amazing. And sadly, their environment is under great threat. It's going away. Global climate change is real. It ain't no joke. And so it was beautiful and at the same time tragic. I'm one of the 20 people who signed, checked the box and paid the extra $50 to take the camping trip. So I wanted to lie on my back on the floor of the Antarctic Peninsula and do my thing, like I'm alive and lying on my back somewhere in Antarctica. I wanted that. It was my main reason for going, to spend a night out there. And so I did. And they gave me a shovel. We went to Nico Harbor, which is home to like hundreds of rutting Gentoo penguins who do not sleep, nor do they shut up. And so all it is penguin crap, and like you're surrounded by penguins like, they're just intense. And so they give me a shovel, dig a hole to cut down on wind, and I'm lying in this hole with my sleeping bag on, with penguins going, and I'm like, I can't talk to you. And so you're not allowed to talk to them or make gestures because you can't freak them out. And so I wanted to have my own Antarctic first. And I decided I'll be the first person ever to listen to Raw Power by the Stooges in its entirety at the bottom of the world. And if I make it through this mission, I'll return to the ship the next day and email Henry McGrogan, the manager of Iggy Pop, and let him know and tell him to tell the big man what I have done. And so I plug in my little headphones and I listened to Raw Power for like the 80 millionth time. However, this listening was like no other I've ever had because my earplugs are very small and the volume isn't all that great. So it was 50% Stooges, 50% Penguins. And it was like, you know, James Williamson, and then, it was so weird. And I'm nodding my head to the music and Penguins are like, looking at me. And I'm like, you want to check it out? Anyway, and so the record comes to an end. I roll up all my gear and I put it in my coat, and I'm just lying there in my sleeping bag looking at the Arctic sky, which is like kind of pale. It's like the sun doesn't set. The glacier is beautiful. The penguins are everywhere. You can't sleep because of the noise and the smell. And why would you want to sleep? Because you're never getting back there again. So I said, I'm going to stay up for the next 7 hours. I'll sleep later. I found out later I fell asleep. Around 05:30 hours, I was asleep. A fellow camper, a woman walked by me. She told me later, Henry, you were dead asleep, covered in snow, because it was starting to snow, with a penguin staring at you like, it was so great. Anyway, at 6:30, our camp counselor goes, all right, campers, roll up your gear. And we roll up our gear, we dig our holes back in so the penguins don't fall in and injure themselves, and we leave no trace of ourselves on the island. We go back to the ship, and I get a 100-minute voucher for internet access, and I write Henry McGrogan. I say, Dear Henry M., 'tis I, Henry R., beaming in to you from the edge of the Antarctic Peninsula, would you please tell the undisputed heavyweight champion of rock and roll, Iggy Pop, that I have listened to Raw Power in its entirety, thus establishing an Antarctic first, and let the big man know and tell me what he thinks. And so hours later, I go back online, and Mr. McGrogan has written me back. Dear Henry R., 'tis I, Henry M., I greatly admire your present location, and I will tell the man of what you've done, and you know how weird you are, right? Of course. And so I have not yet found out what Iggy thinks of my Antarctic feat, but I bet he'll be very pleased, because every single time I confess something I have done in his name, he always gets a kick out of it. I'm a music thief. I steal music, because my gospel is, my sermon is, from the mouth, is I travel this world with a 1.5 terabyte hard drive with hundreds of thousands of MP3s. Why? So I can meet other young or other people and drag and drop records onto their desktops. I meet young people all over the world. I go, what kind of music do you listen to? And they tell me, I go, okay, you need to listen to this, 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 and this, and this. And I plug in my hard drive into their laptop and I drag and drop music onto their desktop.